Unlocking Growth, Freemasonry's membership blueprint. Before we get started, because I forgot to do this last month, if you have any questions during the evening, simply hit the QA button on the right side of the screen and we'll try to answer your question before we get done with the broadcast. Can't guarantee it, but we'll give it a try. Let's just jump right into things. I want to introduce to you our panel for tonight. So we have one of the founding partners of Cercone Brown, our marketing firm, the ones that came up with Not Just a Man, a Mason, Len Cercone.
Thanks, Jim. Good to be here.
And we have Linda Patch, our director, senior director of marketing and communications, and longtime partner.
Thank you, Jim.
We also have a very special guest panelist joining us online tonight, the Deputy Grand Master of Ohio, Bill Carter. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well, Jim. Greetings from tropical Cleveland, Ohio. Nice to see you.
Yeah, how hot is it there?
It's in the 90s, and it's nice and sticky. So
okay.
This is our rainforest season.
All right. So I want to just jump right into it. Linda, during our last program, we were asked by almost everybody, there were lots of questions. How do we actually put all this new information that the wonderful book that you and Len wrote, Path Forward, what do we do with it now? Okay, you gave me the data. Can we give them some help?
We certainly can. This is a continuation of our webinar for last time, and it came from, you asked for questions and comments, and it came exactly from that. We had a lot of questions during the evening about lead generation, how you work with leads, how we work with prospects, how you cultivate membership, and what do you do with the data. And so tonight we're going to delve into this topic. Len and I are going to go through the macro of just generally how you work with leads and prospects and issues regarding follow-up. We're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's going to be a rich and useful discussion. And then we're going to turn it to our special guest, Deputy Grandmaster Bill Carter, to bring it home. Because what Bill is going to be able to do is to illustrate a lot of what we're talking about, boots on the ground, through their successful, really innovative and replicable program that they have going on in Ohio. So we're going to dig in right now and get going, and we're going to start with framing the conversation just a bit with a look at one of the key factors, the money shot, if you will, of the findings in our 2024 survey of Freemasonry, which now ranks as the largest study of the craft done to date. Mm-hmm. And the key question is, will men join? And we posed this question directly to 3,500 American men, all non-Masons, from coast to coast, and we asked them about their interest in joining Freemasonry based on what they knew cold. Based on your current knowledge of Freemasonry, would you consider joining? And the answer was absolutely yes. In fact, a full 46% of those 3,500 respondents said yes, they would be interested in joining Freemasonry based on what they knew, but we wanted to go deeper. So what did we do, Len?
Well, what we did is we gave them a little information on Freemasonry, the tenets of Freemasonry, and when we did that, we went from nearly half, the 46%, to nearly 2 in 3 men said they would be interested in Freemasonry, which is an astounding jump.
And what that means is we told them what you stand for, right? As marketers, we didn't have to spin it, we didn't have to exaggerate it, we didn't have to make up a story about what Freemasonry is about. We simply presented the tenets and the values of what you stand for: tolerance, integrity, charity, long-standing history. And if you think about that, just presenting what the craft is about, it tells you that the craft itself is the key. Mm-hmm. Did you have a question, Jim?
No. Not a thing, because mine's just a statement, and we've talked about this quite often. For me, we don't have to do anything to Freemasonry as far as when we're explaining it to exaggerate it.
No.
Because the very
That's
things
right.
we stand for are the key to our success.
Yeah, and it's really focusing on the tenets and the values. That's what gets people interested. Yeah. And that's what makes us Freemasons. So it's perfect.
And then we have also established, and we went, I just want to level set the conversation again with just a look at the website beafreemason.org that we launched in 2020 in partnership with Shriners International and the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction. And the results of that website have shown us year over year, proof of concept year over year, that men are looking to join, men want to join, and we just have to help them find their way. And one of the reasons that we built this site was really quite humble, insofar as we did research on internet search, and men were being served up just stacks of irrelevant information. So in talking with Cercone Brown, we decided that we would build a front door to augment what Grand Lodges were doing, to present the story of the history of this brotherhood in all its truth and honor, in a central location, using the Not Just a Man, a Mason campaign, which we know is data-driven, every headline, every image. We test it all the time. We know it has not reached market saturation. So we created this front door, and part of it, if you see the red arrow there on the slide, that button leads a man to get in touch, and that is our lead generation portal.
Yeah, that's what, when we say lead, that means someone who's expressed interest in joining or learning more.
It's a real person.
It's a real person on the other end. They're reading about it. And what I think is really exciting about this is, as we had said, is the values and the tenets of Freemasonry are what get people excited to want to join. And we had full control because we created it, with, I'm a Mason myself, and people like you. And this was done with the Shrine and also Southern Jurisdiction. We did that all together. And so when you give them the right message, they're primed to join. And if you look at the numbers of people who hit that button.
What happened?
Yeah, over 100,000.
135,000 more than leads, those are men interested in joining, have been sent to Grand Lodges in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And more than 97,000 men who have expressed interest in joining have been sent to Grand Lodges across the U.S. So now I'm going to ask the audience to prepare themselves for really an unflinching and clear look at what happens to these leads once they move on. So are lodges and Grand Lodges following up, Len?
Not nearly enough. Not nearly enough.
So what we did is in 2021, we launched the website in 2020. A year later, we wanted to know, are they, how is it going? Are they hearing back? Are men being followed up with by a local lodge or a Grand Lodge? And we found in 2021 that 68% of all men who had submitted information, submitted their form asking to learn more, had not been contacted.
Wow.
And so we reported this. I reported it at conferences, and anytime Len and I would do a presentation, we would bring this forward to try to say, well, let's see if we can make this better. So we followed up again, we did, in 2023, and we asked those leads, again, the number had also grown because a couple of years had passed, had it gotten better, had these men in this funnel been followed up with. And actually what we found out is now 83% of all the men through the beafreemason.org website had not heard back.
That doesn't make sense. Wait, what happened?
Well, people didn't get in touch. It's simple as that. It's like if someone were knocking on the door in your home, but you just don't go to the door to answer it. And it's worse because in that scenario, maybe it's a salesman. In this scenario, it's what we work so hard to do, which is bring men into the craft. And Bill, let me ask you, because you deal with this on a regular basis. You're going to tell us how it works. But what if I told you that you work so hard to bring in 1,000 guys that are interested, 2,000 guys, 10,000 guys, whatever it is, and if out of every 1,000, 830 of them, no one even bothered to talk to? What would you say to that?
You're fired.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think what it really talks to is really two stages in this process. First of all, we realize, and Linda pointed this out beautifully, we are relevant. We're very relevant to what men are looking for. The problem is, once they really connect with that relevance, when they begin to knock on the door, if we make some assumptions and don't actually engage those individuals, we are going to lose that. And my goodness, if you were to even think of that from a business perspective and thinking that, from a sheer customer service standpoint, that, 83% of your customers are going to go away dissatisfied, you can see that's not a recipe for success. You pretty quickly you're going to be out of business. So very, very important to have not only the relevance but the actual engagement on the back end.
Right, and that it's beyond not satisfied. It's they didn't even have a chance to even think about buying yet. And so what we'll talk about today is, Jim, it's not, we're going to harp on this for a little bit. You've got to follow up, and then we'll start to talk about how to think about follow-up. So
yeah, it's a bigger than just a task on a list, but we'll get
there
to
is
that
good
in a
news
moment.
too.
No, there is good news. Now, this is the part that always blows my mind, because you do not see what I'm going to show you next be true for businesses or most other organizations. So we ask these leads, are you still interested in joining?
Some of them sitting there 2 years.
Okay, 98% of that 83% said they are still interested in becoming a Freemason.
Can you imagine?
No.
I mean, that is a second chance. That is a second life.
Like a fourth chance.
Honestly.
After
And
a couple of 4 years.
again, but it speaks to, it's not, right, lack of interest in men today. It's the converging realities, what Bill alluded to, of the loneliness crisis among men, the disconnection among men in society today, and their interest in what Freemasonry has to offer for that sense of belonging and purpose. They know that that's what the organization can help provide to them. And again, year over year, the data for beafreemason.org just grows and grows and gets bigger. And the relevance issue isn't even a question anymore.
There's a couple of interesting points that kind of underlie this. One is, we're not investing heavily in building those leads.
That's right.
Because these are people who are organically searching, finding, and taking that step. Okay, so imagine if we really put effort, some advertising dollars, but if we're not following up, there's no sense in bringing any more in, is number one. The other thing is, I think, this gets to kind of the cultural and the mindset shift that we need to start to have, is that you saw 135, these are every single one. We call lead. It kind of dehumanizes it. And Bill, I know you talk about this a little bit, which is these are real guys who are looking for something in their lives. I mean, talk about what you mentioned before we came on about this, tendency to dehumanize something like this.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And, I think sometimes that tendency to dehumanize is almost a comforting factor for us, because we have a tendency to look at this almost as, and I apologize that I don't have a better phrase for this, but we almost look at this as funnel stuffing, right? Let's get as many people in the top of the funnel so that those small percentages that we see grow in terms of their number. So it is a very, in a way, it helps us to do that. But when we really do stop and think about it for a moment, we do realize that it's a dehumanization. These individuals already have enough of an emotional investment that they have reached out. That's a very difficult first step in a world that we could argue becomes increasingly disconnected, despite the fact that we're very intimately connected through digital means. So, it doesn't surprise me that we still see that even despite being neglected, still 98% are still, they're interested in this. So it is a very human thing that we're dealing with here. We can't over pivot onto the numbers so much.
So one of the things that my viewers want to know is, of that 98% of those 83% of those people that aren't contacted, what can we do? I know it's easy to say, well, just call them, but it's got to be more than that. Where do we go with this?
Well, I think you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. I mean, there were 3 questions that, before we even get to what to do next, is try to figure out what's wrong. Why isn't it happening?
That's fair.
And is it a misunderstanding about what follow-up is? And I think there is some of that. We're going to talk about follow-up. It's not a one and done. It's not a task that needs to get checked. There's probably an element, I know that, for many, many years, a lot of, especially people who've been in the craft for some time, we weren't allowed to solicit. So there's a little bit of a cultural, I don't want to be too pushy. I don't want to sell it. That's not where we are today in most lodges, most Grand Lodges. But really the other thing that's huge, and I know, Linda, you talk about this a lot in your presentations, is there I'm not going to ask this a question. I'm going to say there is a lack of focus business infrastructure, doing this like a for-profit business. Because remember, these guys are interacting with every other business
That's right.
in a way that they expect to be interacted with. Right. And not following up to an inquiry is just something that I don't think they're used to. I can't imagine, another company that does that.
And we'll get into it more with the digital age and the rising generations that are coming. But I will say, I'll go out on a limb and say, just based on the data, based on even what this little bit that we have presented here this evening, 46% growing to 64% level of interest. The year over year that I keep talking about, the numbers just keep growing. I really think that lack of follow-up is probably one of the most destructive forces inhibiting growth of the craft.
Sure.
You have to do, I know you said don't, it's a little more to it, we hope, than just do it. But gosh, just do it.
Yeah.
Let's just start. Now, we'll talk about why it's important and maybe what to think about so you can do it in a way that'll be very effective.
That's right.
But we're not going to get, what did Wayne Gretzky say? I miss 100% of the shots I don't take. It's a similar thing. If you don't talk to people, they will never join.
Right.
And we're going to talk a little bit, because we're marketers and because we work in this area, we think about follow-up maybe in a way that a lot of people don't. For instance, follow-up needs to be taken out of the task category. It really is a holistic process that goes beyond a task on a to-do list. Okay. And we're going to talk about the fundamental reasons now why follow-up is important and how, not everyone may understand how necessary it is for cultivation. And that it's just not a chore just to
It's not a chore. It's a process, first of all. It's a nurturing process. It's a get-to-know-you process. And I think the biggest thing, and this goes again to a cultural, historically cultural thing, where I think we look sometimes at what should be a nurturing process as a vetting process.
Right.
And we're not there yet. At the inquiry stage, we're not there yet. We're not vetting yet. And what's ironic is that by spending time and creating more of an engagement, you'll get to know that person better. They'll make an informed decision. And you'll be able to make an informed decision. So even though it's not vetting, it has to be more welcoming. It'll still have the same effect to get to know if they're a fit, and they can get to know if they're a fit.
Yeah, I can wait till later. I want to get to know you.
How else can you vet?
Right.
And Len is going to take us through 5 ways that actually doing follow-up to emphasize what he's just been saying, how it actually builds trust and confidence, those touch points, those first moments of engagement.
Yeah, well, the first one is the personal touch. Okay, so up to this point, this person has been reading, it's been digital, it hasn't been person to person. And now you get into the real magic of Masonry, when it becomes man to man, okay? That's the first thing, so you get that personal connection. And it also, Bill, you mentioned this, that person is already taking an emotional investment and a step that they might be a little bit nervous about. Makes them feel comfortable, makes them feel acknowledged and valued. Everyone wants to feel acknowledged and valued, and then this is also, it sets a trajectory for that relationship for the rest of the time if they become Masons, or their relationship of how they think about the Masons in the future. And then, we go into what we just mentioned, was this trust has to be built on both sides. So if you don't do it, like Linda said, it's not a task that you check off the box. If you think of this as a nurturing period, and everyone goes at their own pace. Some people are ready to go and join, other people take time. And that builds trust on both sides. And at very least, when we don't follow up, we're not men of our word. We asked if you're interested. Masons are men of their word. If you say you're interested, I need to get back to you.
Which is why I think when you gave me that terrible statistic earlier, why it hurt. Because I do believe that. I do believe we're men of our word.
That's who we are.
Well, for Masonry is about connection, right?
Right.
And potential members, as Len just said, when you present everything that's true about Freemasonry, they're enticed by that. Integrity, the messages of brotherhood and connection. And that, what we're telling them, what truly is true about Freemasonry is then undone, right? by a lack of follow-up. It breaks the trust in the organization. It breaks the word of the organization that is, in fact, about caring and connection. So the other thing that we can use follow-up to do is to also more practically address concerns. You are able to talk to a prospect and identify hesitations or questions that they may have. You can provide accurate information to dispel misconceptions. You know, Freemasonry has, it's a secret society and has a lot of things swirling about that are true and not true. And you can take that opportunity to have a conversation if there's something that the person doesn't understand. It helps that potential member decide. It also helps you decide whether this is a fit and this is a worthy man who should be brought into the organization. We know not everyone fits the bill. True. It's not an open door to everyone. And again, we can't emphasize enough that it demonstrates that caring from the start. And it also very much strengthens Freemasonry's reputation as professional, reliable, and committed. I think, you know, I've had the pleasure in my life to work for a lot of historic institutions like the Museum of Fine Arts. I've worked for major companies like ExxonMobil. And this, in my mind, Scottish Rite, Freemasonry in general, is at that level. It is a historic institution with a global reputation. And anything and everything that is presented either literally or metaphorically with the square and compasses in any way should reflect the esteemed standing of this institution. And something as simple as follow-up is part of that.
One of our viewers is pointing out too, especially when you get down to the valley levels. So a lot of the not just Amanda Mason data, that's going to the Grand Lodges. So I don't know if it's going from the Grand Lodges to the valleys, and it's just not, it's probably every Grand Lodge is different, right? But this particular viewer is pointing out it's full of volunteers, and not that many. So it's the same guys who are the lodge officers are the guys serving the meal, you know, to themselves. So, and that's one of the things they're pointing out. So, and they struggle with.
Yeah, I think that, you know, Bill's kind of, if I can maybe, you know, spoiler alert, you know, Ohio is one of the states that has put some things in place to address that, exactly. So I'll say hold the answer to that, and he'll be able to say, how are we doing it in Ohio? And it's not the only state. There are others that are doing, you know, Connecticut. I don't want to list them because then I'll leave someone out.
Right.
But there's a lot of states that have really, so not all of it is technical, but some of it can be technical. So, but what it does, I think one of the biggest things we're talking about when you say about the reputation is that it you know, word of mouth. With all our sophistication in marketing we like to think we have, at the end of the day, we want people talking to each other. And when you engage follow-up, when you give people that sense of warmth, even if they choose not to be a Mason at that time, might just be because it's not the right time for them, or they decide they're not going to be a Mason. But that positive, how they feel when they leave, is what they're going to tell everyone in their life.
Right.
When someone, you went to, I went down there. They're good guys. Yeah. You know what it's a secret society. Well, yeah, there's some secrets, but you know what it's really about is truth, brotherly love, and relief.
Yeah.
You know. That's what makes it come to life. All of our digital marketing is really to get people talking to one another. And that happens when you talk to them.
The other question that we get often is, do the leads actually convert? Do these men in the funnel, that's what we call our list of potential candidates, do they become Masons? So Len, do they?
They do.
And how many?
1 in 3.
1 in 3 leads who are followed up with.
That's a
converted.
lot.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of people. So you take that 97,000, do the quick math on it. You're talking 30,000 guys.
That's a lot of new friends and brothers.
Right. And the other thing where that kind of we didn't touch on, but when you do this sort of engagement and talk about the things we talked about and think of it as a process and a nurturing process and a get to know you, you know, what I believe, and I don't know that we can point to a number right now. Maybe later, actually, we might have some data on this. But
We do.
what you're basically doing is making sure, without even trying, that the men who say yes and join will stay.
Right.
Because they know what they're getting into.
That's
Right.
right.
You know?
Because
You
the
rush through
promise
that.
is real from the
Yeah.
beginning, and it carries through.
Well, and this actually may be for later. Maybe Bill will cover this, or can give a hint on how to work on this. One of our friends from Maine is saying we are bringing guys in, but after the EA, they're not coming. Entered apprentice, they're not coming back. So I mean, we know TNR is a perfect place. We are always working on the show to try to make it better, to make it more entertaining, to make it more convenient. So they're struggling with that. Maybe, I don't know if we can do
Yeah,
it tonight, but
Bill
somehow we can get
will
to
address that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll address it. And also, you know, what does work for follow-up is that is when you have a chance to talk. You can't tell them what's going to happen in the ritual, you know, but you can talk about what to expect. And I know Ohio's done a good job with trying to condition people so that, let's face it, if you haven't been in a room like that and you haven't been through an experience like that, now we've all seen it a lot. First of all, they don't see it. You know, pun joke intended, but the real challenge is it can be a shock to the system. And so by starting with these kinds of conversations, we can do a really good job of conditioning people so that, you know, they again, we can't tell them exactly what to expect. And part of the fun is not knowing, but you can get them to understand why we do it, what it means, the history of it, not just blindly go through it and do some memorization. So let's talk about what works. A fast response is probably the most important. Fast response. You need to turn this around. Bill, not to put too much pressure on you, but you're going to tell us how to do that. And you're also going to tell us about a defined response program, how automated emails can work into this. And then, you know, really following the entire membership journey, and you touched on this, is, you know, the membership journey doesn't end at Entered Apprentice. You know,
Right.
the membership journey, in fact, never ends.
Right.
But that first year is most important, especially after, if someone goes 3 months in a row and is raised, they don't even know what just happened. So you need to continue to think of them as someone that needs to be nurtured. So, you know, what do they want to know about? You can, you know, take this, Linda, where...
Well, we've been
you know?
asked a number of times, you know, well, what do we talk about? Like, so here's some primers. Here are 6 topics that if you feel a little uncomfortable and you don't know what you can talk about in that nurturing, that first conversation, talk about your brothers, who your brothers are, what the local Masonic scene is like, the lodge experience, the benefits of joining. We know that from the data, the top 2 reasons men are interested in joining Freemasonry is to be involved more closely in the community. Talk about what your lodge does, the kinds of involvement that you have, and the issues of self-improvement. And if all else fails, talk about the history of Freemasonry and some of the symbols,
They
because
love symbolism.
they love it.
It's fascinating.
So it is absolutely, positively a winner if you can't think of
I
anything
wouldn't start
else.
with symbolism.
No, I wouldn't either. but people, you know, those are a few things.
Well, they
and,
usually bring it into it.
Oh my God, they love it.
and there are 3 questions that Len and I were talking about that we think that each Grand Lodge and Lodge needs to answer. And I don't think they're provocative, but they're, you know, they're going to take some introspection. And one is, where are we on the issue of follow-up? Do we really, truly want to serve prospects and uphold the integrity of our word? And is there more work our particular Grand Lodge or Lodge needs to do in this area? And I think every lodge, Grand Lodge, Scottish Rite Valley, needs to answer that, feel the weight of those questions. And if you dare to answer with a yes, and I don't think there's any other answer to any of them, it sounds simple, but you can't underestimate the impact. That gentleman who was talking about it's just run by volunteers.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it is going to take some strategic thinking. It's like a strategic mission. It's like almost a Manhattan Project. It demands commitment and unrelenting pursuit of excellence in this area. It can be done. It's a matter of will. It's a matter of just picking it apart and figuring out how to put it together. And it is within that excellence that resurgence and sustained growth for the craft resides, and the destiny is in your hands.
Yeah, if you look in the mirror and all three of those answers weren't yes, you need to join another organization.
Yeah, and also I think you have to keep up on it. You know, that's why the fast response is important. If they pile up, it gets daunting.
Yes.
You
That's
know,
right.
but if you know, at the local lodge level, we're not talking about thousands and thousands of people at the very, you know, the local, not Grand Lodge level. And so just, you know, if you keep up on it and just pick away at it like anything else, it will be much more manageable.
Sure.
And we're going to talk now a bit, and we're coming up on Bill in just a moment, but Len and I need to address an issue, and that is something that has come to our attention in recent months. And Len speaks very eloquently to this issue of, we don't even know what to call it, so we call it the digital leads
The
issue.
digital leads issue.
The digital situation we have.
Well, one of my brothers in, I won't mention the state so we don't have to figure out who it is, but he pointed out to me when we were talking about why aren't these things being followed up on, and he said, you know, some folks just don't think a lead that comes through the internet is real. So, well, what do you mean by that? Now, this is 2024, okay? Netscape Navigator was on our computers in 1995. You know, we've had phones and iPhones since 20 years now. What do you mean it's not real? Well,
And let me just interrupt, because
oh, yeah.
this is how Len and I feel. If we can put this slide up.
Yeah, can we see this? Huh?
Well, like what? And that is also, for everyone watching, that's my adorable baby
Gratuitous.
grandson. Yes, it is gratuitous, but you know, he just kind of captures the feeling like, what do
What
you
are you
mean
talking
digital
about?
leads aren't real? What?
So listen, I'm just going to say this and leave it at that. They are real. They're real people. This is how people interact. And by the way, this is how anybody, the younger you get, and our target is people who work, because who's our target?
We're getting there. And really, I just want to make the point that if diversifying reach is critical for survival in
Yes.
2024, because our target market is now a huge generational shift. It's the millennial generation.
It's not about us guys anymore. We're over the hill.
So I just got to throw away the first book, because in the first book we were the target.
That's right, the boomers. But as we've talked about, that was 2016.
Oh, we
Yeah.
marketed the heck to the boomers. We got anyone that was going to joined. So, but you know, they aged out, and you know, I'm an older Gen X. And it's really going to the younger Gen X, and to the millennials. And when you look at it, you know, tell us about this, because this
Yeah.
is some fascinating stuff. When you take the data we had of all Americans and all that wonderful, how many people want to join, when you just look at millennials, the numbers go off the chart.
They're off the charts, and we're not going to get into it, but there's a great synergy between the boomer generation and the millennial generation. So this isn't terribly surprising to
No,
us.
same
But
type
the
of
fact
values.
of yes, exactly, they share a lot of the values. In our survey of the millennial population, 77% say that the Freemasons sound like a group that they would like to join, particularly after the exercise of learning more. When they really got to know what the values and what the organization stood for. And that was more than any other generation. 3 out of 4 millennials also want to spend more time participating in local groups. We talk about the disconnection among men, the loneliness crisis in this country. Just Google, men have no friends. And 3 out of 4 millennials identified as wanting to spend more time in local groups. Again, more than any other generation. And we've looked back at research that McKinsey did in 2022 about the millennial generation, and what they present is that loyalty, equality, and responsibility are the strongest values in that generation, which completely predisposes them to finding and joining Freemasonry as an option for fulfillment, right? And it's important to remind ourselves that, and I see this with my husband, I see this with the men I work with, all of you, that true bonds in Freemasonry are formed in service and purpose, right? Not just connection and interaction. And responding to the call to service is a key marker of the millennial identity. There is enormous possibility, huge and real possibility with this rising generation.
Yeah, and I guess the next question is, when people come in, do they, this whole digital thing, and do they stay?
Right. I mean, do they stay? We have a lot of questions about that. So I'm going to use some Scottish Rite statistics to illustrate what has happened here in this organization. Since 2018, more than 32 members began their journey into Scottish Rite online. That is through what we call our digital recruitment program. They began clicking on an ad on social media, or they came to our website. Their first touchstone, their first bit of engagement to inquire about joining the Scottish Rite began online. That now accounts for 42% of all of the new members coming into Scottish Rite are beginning digitally. Do they stay? Well, since 2018, 88% of those men are still members today. Let's take a look at Join the Rite Night, where we provide an opportunity to become a member online. To tell them a little bit about Join the Rite Night, Jim.
So we know that TNR, for all my viewers out there, you know how important we are as a membership system program. In fact, just in season 5, nearly 8,500 degrees were accredited for witnessing on TNR. That means a lot more people actually went on, but these are actually people who said, I want credit for my passport for seeing the 27th degree. Mm-hmm. So there's many, many more. We know it's widely popular, but can we use it? We use it as a retention tool. Can it be a good recruitment tool? So 30 minutes before every episode. That's now, right. And this was, Linda, much because of the way you pushed it. You wanted it every single TNR. And every single TNR, we have viewers, and we have new Scottish Rite Masons that conveniently at home watch the 4th degree and take their first steps in Scottish Rite.
And since we began the program in 2020, 2,139 members have joined through a Join the Rite Night.
That's a lot of people.
And 89% are still active today.
Of course.
They found the promise was real.
Just
they found
do that
what they
again.
needed.
Do that again, because there are people who will tell you that if you watched the degree and you didn't, we would all love to go to a live degree. It's not always possible. People want to have the learning. They want to have they want to have that. So it doesn't have to be an either or.
That's right.
And they're still members today.
Yeah.
And what we have to begin to express and have people internalize is that the digital, like you said, Netscape has been on since whatever. Millennials are the first digital native generation. They do not see the digital as a cop-out or an easy way out. It is, yes, it's convenient, but digital programming, digital ways to learn, in addition to being able to take advantage of in-person events, is a 360 experience to them.
Sure.
It is not an either or. They have, this is what they know. This is what their life is. This is what they expect.
Well, you know what bothers me is, okay, so a few people who come in through our digital pipeline don't stay. We know that that's true on the pocket petition side too.
Yeah, it's
few, and part of it is because it's not right for them, and part of it is because, as some of these viewers are saying right now to me, they're not excited by what they're seeing. So we're letting them down. We're not fulfilling our promise to them. I'm sure you're going to probably talk to that, Bill. We're not fulfilling our promise.
Well, it is not, again, it is the digital realm done well, and I know that this institution, the way we have webinars that cultivate the candidates before they take the degree, so they know what to expect. I know that we put together from what you tell me, Jim, so much care and so much respect is put into the presentation of that 4th degree online, and then we're going to be doing more in the education arena in the next season because we have a lot of call for that. That's a force multiplier.
Sure, they want more, and we have the ability to do it. So why aren't we doing it, Linda? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what you can do, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as the saying goes. You can use not just a man, a mason to campaign. Okay, so We're talking making new Masons. That's available on the Scottish Rite website. There's a download for every piece of material that we've ever created. And you can ask for it to be customized, and you guys will customize it for you.
Sure.
You got to focus on the millennials. That means thinking like a millennial. That means being respecting digital leads. It means being a digital engagement company. You have to have someone who really can get into this, either become an expert or hire an expert if you can. And you got to just make this a top priority.
Sure.
And there are tools and resources in addition to not just Amanda Mason, including the book.
And do we have a winner of our...
We sure do. And from Pennsylvania, Russ Hastings.
Russ Hastings, okay.
Here's the book. It's now yours.
We'll contact you tomorrow, Russ, and we'll get your information. We'll confirm everything, and we'll get a copy. For the rest of you, our new book, The Path Forward, Empowering the Future of Freemasonry, has every single bit of data that we learned in that 2024 study in context with explanation. It's available on Amazon. They're going fast. We may sell out, but they're being reprinted. They will be available. And just know that all the proceeds from the sale of the book go to the Grand Almoners Fund here at Scottish Rite to help brothers in need. And everyone who signed up today and registered, tomorrow you'll get a link for a rebroadcast if you'd like to see parts of this again, and also an ebook, FollowUp, Freemasonry's Not So Secret Weapon, which outlines some of and a lot of what we talked about, Len and I, here this evening.
And let's not forget that also on the Scottish Rite website, there are several downloadable books on Masonic marketing series.
Right. Just put in the search bar Masonic Marketing Series, and you can get Facebook and LinkedIn and all kinds of helpful information. So thank you from our part, and now it is time to turn this to Brother Bill Carter to bring it home and tell us exactly what can be replicated and done as you are doing in the state of Ohio.
Well, thank you so much. And, what an absolutely great discussion we're having. I love that, and Len was talking about this a lot. I heard him mention multiple times the importance of culture. And culture is really where the sensation of that reality really begins to land as we engage individuals through these digital portals. And let's not forget that this is a portal. This is a means of that initial engagement, and certainly very important. It's certainly in this 21st century the way that most individuals will choose to engage. They will choose to engage from a digital perspective, but the natural expectation is there's going to be somebody behind there. And so while we definitely understand the importance of marketing ourselves, and I do think of a lot of this marketing information as something that is so critically important to us telling our story, and telling our story in a way that is digestible by those who are trying to learn it. It is that engagement on the back end that's absolutely critical, and it's what they're looking for. So just to share a few things, and I won't read through all of these statistics here, but we recognized very quickly as a Grand Lodge that we had the opportunity to essentially orchestrate some of the strategies that we utilize to not only provide that portal, but to begin that engagement process. One of the first parts of that strategy was our Grandview membership engagement tool, and a shout out to the folks at Grandview. By utilizing Grandview to begin some of that email outreach to those who might be interested in the fraternity, it enabled us to be much more frequent, much more deliberate about the ways that we engaged. And then, of course, our work with Cercone Brown. As a Grand Lodge, we identified very quickly that Cercone Brown really aligned with the way that we wanted to tell our story as a Grand Lodge. And so really linking these two things up and developing a program of engagement for those who reach out and are interested in the Masonic fraternity, we ended up with some of the highlights that you see here on the screen. And there's really two in particular that I want to point out to you. First of all is the average open rate. So what this is referring to is when we do an outreach with email, how often do the recipients actually open the email? And in our case, it was 56%, which doesn't sound incredibly high, but honestly, I think everybody here knows that we get so much email that a lot of times it's just very easy for us to skip by those things. 56% open rate is almost 2.5 times the industry benchmark for emails of this type. So again, I think that's just a tremendous level of engagement. However, I think it's the last statistic on the page that really I think is intriguing to me, because the click rate. Now, what the click rate is in those emails, there will always be some sort of a call to action that would result on the individual clicking. Maybe it's to learn more, maybe it's to engage more deeply. That click rate at 7.9% is also 2.5 times the industry standard. So I think that if you're going to be looking at your campaigns and how effectively you're engaging from the digital perspective, I think that click rate is something that you're really going to want to pay attention to, and you really need to put some focus on generating that interest and that engagement. Now, we refer to this digital engagement that we have once individuals reach out through any of the number of portals. And of course, as a Grand Lodge jurisdiction, we do have our own portal. We're also thrilled to be able to work in conjunction with our Scottish Rite to essentially provide multiple ways that individuals who are interested can come in and they can learn more about this Masonic fraternity. We refer to this as our email nurture series. And again, Len, I heard you even say nurture multiple times as we were talking. The key to it here is, as we develop this strategy, we wanted to identify not only what does each step in the process look like, but what is the content, and then what is the call to action. And we'll dig into this a little bit more, but you'll notice that kind of on the left side, we start with those marketing leads into that transition toward prospective members. And again, we understand that, you know, we addressed this just a moment ago, our digital leads really leads. And certainly with such a broad reach, you are of necessity going to get those who, I guess back in the Gen X days, like myself, we used to call tire kicking. Individuals who are just kind of interested in testing it out a little bit. They're not necessarily fully engaged, but eventually you do get to that prospective member stage. And this is a really, really critical stage, because that is where you are essentially looking to a commitment, right? And we try to foster that in a way that is not, it's not scary. It's in a way that is digestible. It's in a way that really focuses on the comfort of those who might be considering taking a step into this unknown world. Then we kind of transition into the new members mode, which really, you could argue, is a little bit of a disorienting time. They're new members. They are essentially getting exposed to a new culture. And how do we acclimate those individuals to that culture? Not only from the perspective of this nurture series, but this is where things really begin to become crucial in the lodge experience. What are we doing both in the lodge as well as outside of the lodge to continually acclimate that individual to the Masonic culture and to get their engagement? And then, of course, once they have had opportunity to progress their way through that new member stage, and they do hit kind of that more permanent stage, we realize that it's not a matter of treating it like a finish line. We want to make sure that there is a continued onboarding process as that individual begins to grow within the Masonic fraternity. A lot, Linda and Len, both of you have alluded to this a great deal. A lot of that has to do not only with the strategies of what we're using, but really pulling that culture in and making sure that they become a part of it. And I'll ask the question, Len and Linda, have you seen any data, particularly in the Path Forward study that you've done, on reasons that you see individuals, even on a long-term basis, begin to disengage? Have you gained any insight on that?
It's an interesting question, because the most frequent is I don't have time, or I have other commitments, which is, or it's a financial thing, which I believe is, I don't want to sound harsh and say it's an excuse, But you know, if you look at how many people go to the average football game on Sunday and pay well over $150 per seat to get in there, they find the time. So you find the time and find the money for the most part. I don't want to be miss the point with some people, but so people aren't really necessarily tell you the truth. But when they do, it is all about engagement. It's all about whether they were made to feel welcome. And you know, we hear a lot about cliques and things like that.
The promise needs to be
Yeah,
real.
so well, you're right. The promise has to be there. The promise has to be fulfilled.
I think that's well said. And Linda, you've alluded to that multiple times, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You know, Len, I find myself in tremendous agreement with you there. I think the reality is, and we do understand that extenuating circumstances can come up. Certainly, you know, life is full of twists and turns, and we understand that. But the real truth of the matter is that an individual will make time for those things that are valuable to them.
That's right.
We know that. Right? We know that individuals will find ways to increase availability for them to partake in these things if it's something that's valuable to them. So this really is, in addition to kind of acclimating to the culture, it is providing something of value. You know, when we talk about these portals and the email nurture series, the great thing about them is that they do try to foster engagement. And we do try to move individuals on a deeper level to show them what is potentially waiting for them as they engage in this culture. But there's an old saying, and I think it really applies here, and that saying is that you can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up. And that is one of the things that's so important when we begin to do this outreach and this nurturing. There has to be somebody there waiting to show up and be there for those individuals. So if I take a step back from a strategic perspective, there's kind of a nuance that we have here, particularly as you look at the left side of your slide, where we have leads and we have prospects. So what is the differentiation between a lead and a prospect? Well, in the case of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, we really look at it as a two-stage process. When it comes to a lead, we really are looking for minimal information in order to begin that engagement process. You know, we need to make sure that for those who are actually curious, they just want to try it out. It goes back to that question of, our digital leads actually leads? This is the opportunity to sort of vet through that a little bit. So initially, we'll collect name, we'll collect email address, and we'll collect zip code. You know, one of the things that we know that the millennial generation is very aware of is cybersecurity hygiene online, right? Being careful about the information that they're offering and not wanting to get to a place where, you know, they just find themselves either bombarded or, you know, they find that their information is being taken advantage of. So we do start that lead process. That is to differentiate with a prospect, because when we get to that stage, this is where the individual is now willing to volunteer more information because their interest is genuinely and deeply sparked. So we begin to ask for more information. We, in addition to name, email address, and zip code, we're looking for the phone. We're looking for birth dates because there is an age requirement within the fraternity. And we want to get to know them a little bit. What occupation are you involved in? And then we begin to ask some more survey-oriented questions. How did you find us? Tell us a little bit about your interest, and so forth. So that's where the transition really happens and the engagement begins to deepen, is when we move from that lead to that prospect phase. Now, at this point, the nurture series is really beginning, and I'll just kind of show you a quick graphic. I won't go over it very deeply, but I think that this is very important because this is essentially our blueprint that we utilize for doing those outreaches and attempting to engage. So for example, for those at the lead stage, we will do 9 email outreaches, each on a 7-day cadence. So for 9 weeks, we're going to try to provide valuable information with a call to action to the folks that are in that lead stage. Now, they may decide very quickly that they want to jump to that prospect stage. They want to offer more information. They're serious about getting engaged. And so if they do that ahead of that cadence, that's perfectly fine. They now go on a prospect cadence with different material that reaches out to them on a regular basis. In this case, 7 reaches on a 7-day cadence. Now, one of the things that I've been asked is, what happens when the individual goes through all of these outreaches and they reach the end of that cadence? What do you do with them? Well, the answer is, we simply stop spamming, right? We're not going to continue to fill the inbox and build that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be on email lists forever and so forth. We need to be respectful of people's time. So we will go through those cadences, and we've identified those and kind of where's the sweet spot for individuals. And then we continue to move through each of the degrees within Freemasonry. One thing that I think is very important, and I'll call out the Master Mason degree. So this is an individual who has reached the top degree within Lodge Freemasonry. We still continue to reach out to them on a monthly basis for an entire year. So this is just a great way to continue to grow, to continue to engage individuals and so forth. Now, I think this is all very interesting, and this is a great strategy. It certainly has worked well for us, but we really need to talk about a cultural aspect to this. So I want to talk a little bit about conversion rates to kind of use the mathematicals. When we look at individuals who come in as leads, we've observed that the conversion rate from lead to prospect is about 58%. So we are looking at north of half of individuals who come in as a lead, then want to move to that next stage of prospect, offer more information, and so forth. Now, in the Grand Lodge of Ohio, the way that we work with individuals that move this stage is that we have a program manager in the Grand Lodge office who is monitoring for this initial step that individuals can take. When they move from lead to prospect, the program manager identifies where that individual resides, and once they identify that, they move that prospect information into the district where that individual resides. The state of Ohio, we divide into 25 different districts. So once we realize where this person is, they've offered the information on where they reside, we want to make it convenient, we then take that prospect's information, and the program manager will send that into the district. Now, in the district, there is a prospect manager that receives this, and that prospect manager will begin a more personal engagement. Oftentimes, this is a phone call. Sometimes we found that individuals don't want phone calls, but they're okay with text messages, so they may begin text messages. But the conversation starts a lot more around, what is your interest? Tell us a little bit more about what you said in your survey in terms of how you got engaged and what interests you about the fraternity. Now, that district prospect manager, after they've had the opportunity to interact with the individual, they will look at the lodges that may be in that district and find where the best alignment might be for that individual. Now, I know from a cultural perspective, this sounds a little bit unusual, right? Why don't we just pick the lodge that's nearest this individual? Well, the truth of the matter is, Freemasonry is such there's such variability in the lodge experience. You have lodges that are affinity lodges. Maybe the lodge is, does a lot of work with law enforcement officers, and the membership is heavy there. That might be a great affinity for somebody, even though they may have to drive 30 minutes, 45 minutes to get to that lodge. So that step is very important. That district prospect manager is looking for the best match for that individual based on the interaction that they already had. Now, it's interesting because from prospect to petitioner, we see the conversion rate is at about 17%. Now, this sounds like it's maybe very low, but if you really think about this for a moment, this is a critical time. This is the part where the individual, in essence, signs on the dotted line. Yes, I want to be a part of this. I want to spend time with the men that are a part of this lodge. I want to begin this investment of myself. And so 17% is not something that's unexpected. I think it makes a lot of sense as the individual begins to learn more. Now, once obviously somebody petitions, we now hand off to the individual lodges. And the expectation is that there is an individual who will be there to receive them. We refer to them as the lodge prospect manager. They are going to be the contact point for this individual as they move from that petitioning process into entering the fraternity in the first degree. Now, again, there are different ways that lodges like to do this. Some lodges really love to engage for a long period of time to get to know the individual. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Some lodges who they know that an affinity already exists, they may move a little bit more rapidly into from that petitioning into that initial degree that the individual comes to. But what we see, and I guess this is not unexpected at all, is that once an individual petitions, there's an 87% chance that they are going to enter the fraternity in the first degree. Now, to me, this is where things get very interesting, because what we see is moving from that entered apprentice degree to the fellow craft degree, the conversion rate is 69%. Now, this may seem a little bit unexpected. The reason that it's puzzling, and one of our viewers actually alluded to this earlier, is that we see that fully 31% of those who made the commitment entered into the fraternity. For some reason, they're just not returning. And I think we really need to contemplate that. What happened? And this goes back to what Linda has said multiple times. Have we delivered on the promises that we made? Is it possible that the individual didn't get the opportunity to engage beyond the lodge prospect manager? That's entirely possible. They may feel like they're walking into a room full of strangers, and maybe those strangers aren't embracing those individuals. There's an opportunity to increase the friendship and the acclimatizing them to the culture of the lodge. What was their experience like as they came in? It is entirely possible that we have spent so much time on curb appeal and looking good from a marketing perspective, but do we have it once the individual comes into the lodge? This is so very important. This 31% that we lose should really cause us to think, because that is a piece where we know that 31% potentially have experienced what it means to enter the fraternity, and for whatever reason have not seen a draw to come back. It could be life getting in the way. Maybe they look at it and say it takes too much of a commitment, or let's just be honest, maybe they look at it and say this isn't worth my time. So I think that this particular piece warrants us thinking a lot, because when we go from the second to the third degree, you see that the conversion rate is 90%. Massive conversion rate. And I think that the reason we see that so high is that by the time you get to that point and you go back to hit that ultimate stage in your Masonic membership, you've got the emotional investment at that point. And we think about that, right? There's the cognitive understanding of what Masonry is, means you get it. There's the active engagement in Masonry, so you're actually doing things. But the most powerful part is that emotional investment. So I think we really need to take a look at delivering on that promise. What happens there? And these are real numbers. This is what we're seeing in the state of Ohio, and we've done a lot of work with other Grand Lodges, and we see something very similar across the board. So it's very interesting. Any thoughts on that, Linda, Lynn?
No, I think you've said so much. And what this could get overwhelming for people. But you've been at this for a while in Ohio, number one. You didn't just start this. It's been several years. But I think the other thing is that what you're really saying is so much of this is on a personal level. So the sophistication if you can do it, is wonderful. You build it over time. But what you're talking about is fulfilling a promise and engaging people and being empathetic and welcoming them. That's what makes you want to stay. That's what makes you want to come back. And that doesn't take technology. It takes just being a Mason.
Yeah, Bill, you've
That's
answered a lot of the questions that I'm seeing online, which kind of tells me, because they keep on coming, keeps on telling me that maybe Ohio, maybe you're just doing a little bit better than other people. Because I'm even getting, can I just get the lead right at the lodge level because it ain't coming to me. You know, and that's the sad thing. I don't know how we answer that, but I hope maybe other Grand Lodges may be clued into what you guys are doing and take some of these hints. So that's kind of where the conversation's going here. They're asking, where did all these emails come from? How come I'm not getting them? How does it actually get? You've explained it all, so it tells me that their state may not be doing this.
Yeah, you know, and we've thought a lot about this and have gotten those questions with this particular model where you see the handoff from the program manager to the district prospect manager to the lodge prospect manager. We've had the same kinds of questions. Hey, how come it seems like their lodge is getting so many coming in, but our lodge is not necessarily seeing so many come in? And again, that's multiple factors. It could be that the candidate is, you know, located far away from that lodge, and we certainly understand that. Although, again, we believe that a meaningful lodge experience is something that an individual would be willing to drive quite some time for. But the other aspect is, what is the health of your lodge? How ready is your lodge to engage those individuals? Because again, I think it's very important that we realize that when individuals walk away from this, if they are less than satisfied, and this was said earlier, they're going to tell somebody that they were dissatisfied. And it's kind of funny how news tends to spread when it's positive versus, you know, constructive at best, right? You tend to see things spread pretty rapidly. So I think this is really, it's a call to action at the most basic lodge level to really examine, are you able to articulate a cultural message to those who are coming into the fraternity? Look, we understand all of the work that is involved in progressing candidates through these steps. But if we get too strategically minded on this, we may find ourselves very disconnected from what we have promised the culture to be. And you know, I'm a Peter Drucker fan, and Peter Drucker, I think, said it very, very well. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. If you do not have a firmly established and powerful culture that you can articulate, then it doesn't matter what your strategy is. It is bound to fail if it doesn't match your culture. So it's very, very important from a lodge perspective to understand that you have got to be able to articulate a culture, and it has to be real. Listen, the millennials, as Linda said very well, they are a digital native generation. Right? They're us, right? They have grown up with this their entire lives, and they know the kinds of polish that you can make when it comes to an online presence. But when they walk into that lodge room, all of a sudden it gets very real. There's no keyboard behind which we can hide. There's no screen. And they're going to detect that very, very quickly.
Well, I think, Bill, you just kind of answered something that's hitting me over here too, is how do you best build the fellowship, fellowship for a new brother? And I think you just hit it all. We really need to understand them. We need to find a way to understand them. I don't think there is a pill you can take. I think you literally need to understand.
Well, I think you need to want to welcome people. You know, someone on here, I just scrolled through some of the questions. Someone mentioned that everyone's an extrovert. You know, so there needs to be people in the lodge that they're good at because they're naturally like that. The type of people, like my old boss used to say about sales, you have to smile through the phone. But I'll give you a little quick story about my first time in Ohio. And I've told you this 100 times because it was so moving. And I barely got to the meeting on time, and it was it was all the Grand Lodge line was there, had never met anybody, and myself and Whitney Langmaid, who's with us, had to present to them. And so it was a pretty nerve-wracking kind of situation. There was no time to ice break or anything. But when we were done, every one of the men in that room came up to us and, to me as a brother. And I was so amazingly moved. They all gave me, this was my pin when I was Grand Master. And it was just this incredible outpouring of warmth. I didn't know what to do with it. And I was shocked, even though, because it was just so amazing. And I said, what, you guys are being so nice to me. And, put his arm around me and said, Len, like almost puzzled, you're our brother. And if you could bottle that and put it into the local lodge, people wouldn't want to leave the lodge, never mind not come to the next meeting.
Yeah.
And it was just how it was. I'm blown away by that experience. It was amazing to me. Even though I heard about it, even though I read about it, even though I was promised it, when it happens, it is powerful.
Now that is something that, okay, not everyone's an extrovert, but in many cases what you just described is simple.
They weren't extroverts.
And easy.
They were real.
It's simple and easy. It's just caring, right? It's trying to make someone feel welcome. It's starting a friendship. It's simple and easy. Not everything is.
No.
Right, so that's kind of the answer to this for this brother. Yes, there's all this strategic thing, and yes, we need to understand it, but sometimes it's nothing more than just being open and caring and giving of yourself and of your time to a new brother to help build that fellowship relationship.
It's what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's well said. It's a very, very human thing, and that is really where our opportunity. That's where it meets with the capability that we can bring toward those individuals coming in. Whether again they're introverts or they're extroverts, there's something very human and organic. Believe it or not, humanity is very organic. It's not digital. We do know the difference.
That's right.
So while we do understand that there is this thing called social media, we understand that it's not entirely social because there's an artificiality to it. There really is something about, that individual who may shake your hand or maybe if there's even enough comfort, might put their arm around your shoulders and welcome you home as a brother and begin to, through a process of engagement, you begin to transform that individual, whether an introvert or an extrovert. And we always talk about extroverts versus introverts, and oh my gosh, it's so much harder for an introvert to do this thing. And it is true, right? It takes time in building trust for an introvert to begin to come out of their shell a little bit. However, you also need to consider it from an extrovert's point of view, where an extrovert may be very outgoing, and we want to encourage a spirit of contemplation in that individual. So this is a very human aspect that we're trying to come to on this. Just a couple things to finish up real quick here. I wanted to show you the year over year on the click versus open. The bottom line is this has proven effective, and it's getting better every single year. So I really do think it's worth the effort to engage in this kind of a nurture campaign and continue to grow. Let me talk about some opportunities in closing. First of all, one of our opportunities is that lead to prospect transition. I think there's an opportunity for growth there. Raise that 58%. Now, I don't know if you're ever going to get this to 90 or 100%, because the truth is, it is very easy to do that initial pass of name, email address, and zip code, and there you are, right? That's very easy, but the next one does require you to take action. But I think that is our first opportunity there, is to provide information where the leads that come in are already predisposed to become those prospects, so to speak. I think the second opportunity is that lodge outreach. And we mentioned this earlier. When that prospect gets to a point where it's time for them to reach out to that individual, let's try to do it between 24 and 48 hours of them receiving that prospect. Very, very important to do that. Because again, individuals are used to a digital lifestyle where when they click on something, within seconds they get a response. Even though we may have folks that we don't call, the interest is still there. So why not give them a good experience right from the front? And of course, last and certainly not least, in fact, I would argue perhaps the most important part is that drop off after the entered apprentice degree. We really need to take a good hard look at this and really understand, why is that drop off taking place? What can we do to make this an enriching experience, an engaging experience, an experience that causes that individual to want to come back and want to make that investment? So again, I think it's been an incredible journey that we've engaged on, and we certainly value our partners at Cercone Brown. We love the work that we're getting to do with the Scottish Rite, because when we get to that stage that individual has become that full-fledged Mason, a lot of times they want opportunity to dig a little bit more. And the great thing about the Scottish Rite is it will take individuals at that lodge level and begin to expose them at a much more broad level to other brothers that they may have in places that they're able to meet and with whom they're able to interact. So it's really a wonderful motion that we engage. But ultimately, and the thing that I want to leave you with again is, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's so important to understand why we are Masons, and to be able to articulate to those individuals why that's the case. All of the strategy can follow from that, as long as they have that understanding of what they're walking into and why they should care.
That's awesome, Bill. Linda, you want to wrap this up?
I hope, first of all, I'm blown away by Bill's presentation.
he's
Every
awesome.
time I hear it, I am so extraordinarily grateful to him, to you, Len, and
Thank
to
you.
you, Jim, for the opportunity to put these together. We hope they're of service. We hope that they're meaningful and helpful. I do want to point out that not every Grand Lodge will function the exact same way, but please take to heart that what Bill described is replicable in some way, shape,
Yeah.
or form.
And we're
all
seeing
of the
it in smaller lodges,
elements.
mid-sized lodges.
That's right.
So it's not the size of the lodge. It's not the size of the lodge in the fight. I will say one thing that I didn't plan on saying, but as I'm watching you with the workflows, and people can get a little overwhelmed. There is a ton of information if you just go onto YouTube, and maybe even HubSpot. And I know they're going to try to sell
And
you HubSpot.
our marketing series.
Our marketing series, absolutely.
Getting
But
started.
there's a lot of videos on even just email marketing. So let's say that HubSpot offers a nonprofit rate, and they're an email marketing, among other things that they do, and they will teach you for either a short price or for free, because they want you to use the product. And there are a lot of things. So I would say you mentioned it earlier. Be a student of this, and just start poking around. There's more information. There's more help than you could possibly imagine, and you can always get in touch with us.
And we'll be looking again at the chat and the comments, and please reach out to us if there's topics or something that you'd like to learn more about that we can help with. It is really our pleasure and an honor to do this, to help this tremendous organization.
Yeah, well, I spent the weekend in Indiana, and everybody appreciates what we're trying to do with this digital outreach. I don't care if it's the 80-year-old member or the 25-year-old member. Everybody's feeling the same way. So we have an opportunity. We have the tools here to reach out. I hope we have a chance, because I love doing these. I know the viewers love doing these. So I'm hoping that we can build even more ways to communicate all the great things that are happening and give them more and more tools for their Freemasonry toolkit.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll do one on culture.
Maybe.
I'm thinking like it.
All
Coming
right.
up.
So I think we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for unbelievable. Every time I'm with you, Linda, I learn more. I mean, we're together every day, but I
Yeah.
learn more every time
Partner
we
in
do
crime.
this. So the next season of TNR is in January, as I said the last time, and you'll see more about that later. So we've just begun to reach out to you. Thank you for being my brother, and we'll see you again.